Tiana Dye was a high-performing college senior, known for her academic achievements and disciplined routine. A biochemistry major at Alabama State University, she had a promising future, steady employment, and a spotless academic record. She kept to herself, maintained a clean living space, and was preparing to apply to medical programs. But on July 14, 2024, everything ended inside her own home. At approximately 10:45 a.m., a 911 call was placed from a residence near ASU. When first responders arrived, they found Tiana with a fatal stab wound to the chest. She was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. The scene raised immediate questions. There were no signs of forced entry, no burglary. The weapon, a kitchen knife, had been left on the front porch steps. And the suspect? A fellow resident, her own roommate. Reports indicate the conflict began with something most people would consider routine, a request to clean up, but within minutes, it escalated into lethal violence. Law enforcement later confirmed the case as a death investigation and transferred evidence to a grand jury. Yet, no arrest was made at the scene. No suspect has been formally named. The public has questions, and so far, very few answers. Was this a crime of passion, premeditation, or negligence ignored until it turned fatal? Family members say there were warning signs, threats, past aggression, unaddressed concerns. But official records remain limited. Today, we examine the facts, from roommate dynamics and behavioral red flags to the slow-moving investigation and silence surrounding the suspect's identity. In this case, the danger didn't come from a stranger. It was already inside the home. If you enjoy real crime stories that uncover the truth, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us share real cases, spread awareness, and give a voice to those who can't speak for themselves. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Uncovered, where we examine the cases that shake communities and expose what happens behind closed doors. Real stories, real people, real impact. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Tiana Dye was a 21-year-old senior-level student at Alabama State University, an HBCU located in Montgomery, Alabama. She was in the final stretch of completing her degree in biochemistry, a major that demands intensive coursework in areas such as organic chemistry, molecular biology, and lab sciences. Tiana was not only academically qualified, but she was also recognized as a high achiever. She consistently appeared on the dean's list, maintained honor roll status, and had career plans to pursue dermatology, a medical specialty that requires postgraduate training and acceptance into a competitive medical program. In addition to her full academic schedule, Tiana worked part-time at Target. Her ability to juggle rigorous coursework with job responsibilities suggests strict time management and a disciplined lifestyle. According to public records and statements from family members, she was also an active member of the NAACP student chapter at ASU, a detail that highlights her level of community involvement and social awareness. Tiana's background does not indicate any history of disciplinary issues, confrontations, or erratic behavior. She was described as focused, clean, and peaceful. No official records or reports tie her to any prior incidents of violence, either on or off campus. From the perspective of academic and personal achievement, she fit the profile of a student preparing to transition to professional school and a career in healthcare. What pressures do high-achieving students face when balancing school, work, and housing struggles? At the time of her death, Tiana lived in an off-campus residence near Alabama State University. While official documentation does not confirm the total number of roommates, available reports indicate that she shared the house with at least one other person. This individual is the alleged perpetrator in the case, though their name has not been officially released by law enforcement. The choice to live off campus is common among upperclassmen, especially those managing jobs or seeking more independence. However, off-campus living also comes with fewer university controls. Background checks may be limited, housing agreements can vary, and roommate compatibility is often informal. According to Tiana's family, the living arrangement had not been entirely stable. Reports allege that the roommate, now suspected in Tiana's death, had previously displayed violent or aggressive behavior. Family members claim there were verbal altercations in the past, and at least one incident involving a threat with a weapon. However, no formal police reports documenting these altercations have been publicly released as of now. The household dynamic reportedly placed most domestic responsibilities on Tiana. Statements from her mother and friends indicate she regularly cleaned, took out the trash, and maintained order in the shared space. The alleged aggressor was said to avoid contributing to these tasks, creating friction over time. The cleaning imbalance appears to have been a recurring issue, and it may have contributed to underlying tension between the two residents. On the morning of July 14th, 2024, that tension reached a fatal breaking point. Sometime during the late morning hours, a dispute reportedly occurred inside the residence. According to unofficial statements, Tiana once again asked her roommate to contribute to cleaning the shared space. This request led to an argument. What followed was a violent escalation. At approximately 10:45 a.m., emergency services were called to the address. When first responders arrived, Tiana was found with a stab wound to the chest. The weapon used was identified as a kitchen knife. She was transported to a nearby medical facility, where she was later pronounced dead. The suspect did not flee immediately. Surveillance footage from nearby reportedly shows the roommate placing the bloodied knife on the porch steps before leaving the premises. This detail has raised speculation about the suspect's state of mind and potential attempts to dissociate from the act without concealing evidence. Police treated the incident as a death investigation and stated that there was no further threat to public safety, a phrase that typically indicates that the suspect was known and no longer on the loose. Despite this, no arrest or formal name release occurred in the days immediately following the event. Instead, the case was forwarded to a grand jury for evaluation, delaying public knowledge of charges or arrest status. Tiana's mother, Danielle Luckett, has spoken publicly about her daughter's death. She asserts that warning signs were present before the incident and that her daughter had voiced concerns about the roommate's behavior. According to Luckett, the roommate had been aggressive in the past and made threats involving weapons. She alleges that nothing was done to address these issues, either by landlords or authorities. Ms. Luckett also claims that Tiana was the primary cleaner in the household, often responsible for chores that were shared responsibilities. On the day of the incident, Tiana had reportedly taken out the trash and was still wearing her cleaning gloves when the stabbing occurred. While the family has provided these details to the media, they remain unverified by official law enforcement reports. The Montgomery Police Department has not confirmed or denied prior incidents of aggression in the household. As of the latest public update, the case has been submitted to a Montgomery County grand jury. The suspect, though publicly unnamed, is believed to be a former roommate who resided in the home at the time of the attack. No arrest records or formal charges have been released to the public. The delay has led to public frustration and speculation about the pace and transparency of the investigation. Authorities have not stated whether self-defense is being considered, nor have they commented on whether additional witnesses were present in the home at the time of the stabbing. As of now, the investigation is ongoing and monitored closely by the local community, civil rights groups, and student organizations. Tiana Dye's death highlights issues that affect many students. Unstable housing arrangements, lack of institutional oversight in off-campus living, and the potential consequences of unresolved roommate conflicts. While Tiana's academic path and public service involvement painted a picture of future success, her living environment ultimately became the setting of her final moments. With the legal process still unfolding and critical facts undisclosed, questions remain. Who else knew about the tensions in the home? Were prior incidents reported and ignored? And what level of accountability will follow? Do you think schools and housing providers should do more to vet and monitor shared living situations, especially when complaints arise? On July 14th, 2024, a single act of violence inside a shared residence near Alabama State University ended the life of a promising 21-year-old student. The events that unfolded that morning have drawn questions about warning signs, institutional accountability, and the unknowns that surround shared domestic spaces. As of the latest updates, the name of the alleged perpetrator has not been publicly released by authorities. The individual is identified only by her gender, female, and by her status as one of Tiana Dye's roommates. She shared a residence with Tiana in a home located off campus in Montgomery, Alabama. The exact duration of their cohabitation remains unspecified, but according to family statements, it was long enough for multiple signs of conflict to emerge. Reports from victims' family outline a concerning pattern of behavior associated with the suspect. Tiana's mother, Danielle Luckett, publicly claimed that her daughter had previously expressed concern over ongoing tension with his roommate. According to Luckett, the suspect often demonstrated a disrespect towards shared space, including a disregard for cleanliness, maintenance of common areas, and a lack of cooperation with household responsibilities. More critically, it's alleged that the roommate exhibited verbal aggression on a regular basis. This included loud confrontations, confrontational tone, and reported emotional volatility. The victim's family also disclosed that the same roommate had, on one occasion, threatened another resident with a weapon. This claim, though unverified through police records at the time of reporting, suggests a pattern of escalating behavior that may have been overlooked. Despite these allegations, no prior intervention appears to have occurred, either from university officials, housing management, or law enforcement. The roommate remained in the shared residence, and no disciplinary actions or housing adjustments were documented. Should housing screening include psychological evaluations for shared accommodations? What happened on the morning of July 14th, 2024, is described in a structured timeline based on statements from the family, local media reporting, and partial confirmations by Montgomery Police Department. On the morning of the incident, Tiana Dye was seen performing typical household tasks. Security footage and witness reports confirm she was taking out the trash and wearing cleaning gloves, indicating she was actively cleaning inside the home before the confrontation. This detail is important. It demonstrates that her request for cooperation and cleanliness came in the context of her already performing her share of the responsibilities. Shortly after this, according to family claims and unconfirmed statements from within the residence, Tiana confronted her roommate, the suspect, about the cleanliness of the space. It is not known whether this confrontation occurred verbally, through text, or by other means, but it led to an escalation that turned fatal. There is no information indicating that physical violence had occurred between the two prior to that morning. No previous 911 calls were placed from the address, and no protective orders had been issued. However, within moments of this dispute, violence erupted. At some point following the confrontation, the suspect retrieved a kitchen knife from inside the home. Tiana Dye was then stabbed once in the chest. No defensive wounds or additional injuries were reported, suggesting that the attack was fast and targeted. The use of a household kitchen knife, a readily available weapon, is consistent with the pattern in many domestic and roommate-related homicides, where impulsive acts of violence are carried out with accessible objects. Following the stabbing, the suspect reportedly left the weapon on the porch steps. Whether this action was symbolic, intentional, or simply careless is unknown. However, it played a critical role in the investigation, as it preserved the weapon outside the immediate scene. At approximately 10:45 a.m., a 911 call was placed. It is not confirmed who made the call, but emergency medical services arrived promptly at the residence. Tiana was still alive at the time, but in critical condition. She was immediately transported to a local hospital in Montgomery. Despite efforts from medical personnel, Tiana Dye was pronounced dead at the hospital due to the severity of the chest wound. Montgomery Police Department initially classified the case as a death investigation. Authorities made no immediate arrests and did not publicly name the suspect. They later confirmed that the case would be transferred to a grand jury to determine whether charges would be filed. This procedural decision triggered a wave of public scrutiny. On social media and in local community forums, users questioned why the roommate was not arrested on the scene, especially with the presence of physical evidence, a witness timeline, and the alleged confession from the suspect. The police department responded by stating that the investigation was ongoing and that all evidence had to be evaluated by a grand jury before formal charges could proceed. To date, many facts surrounding the case remain under wraps. The suspect's name has not been released. There has been no confirmation of her legal representation, no public court filings, and no official statements from Alabama State University regarding the incident. The case has raised multiple questions that remain unanswered. Was this act spontaneous, or was it the result of long-term unresolved hostility? Were other roommates present at the time of the crime? Had Tiana reported her concerns to university housing, campus security, or local law enforcement before the incident? Why was the roommate not detained immediately, pending investigation? These questions are central to the investigation's next phase. As of now, the case awaits a decision from the grand jury. If charges are filed, it may proceed to trial, where more of the case details, including motive, behavioral history, and forensic evidence, will become available. The murder of Tiana Dye, allegedly by her roommate over a domestic conflict, remains under investigation. While the physical events of the day are partially documented, the context surrounding the suspect's behavior, prior warning signs, and systemic responses to Tiana's concerns are still not fully known. How much oversight should schools or landlords have when it comes to roommate compatibility and conflict resolution? On the morning of July 14, 2024, 21-year-old Tiana Dye, an Alabama State University honors student, was found with a fatal stab wound to the chest. She was transported to the hospital by emergency responders, but was pronounced dead shortly after. As police secured the scene and began to collect evidence, the emerging picture raised more questions than answers. This was not a random act of violence. There were no signs of forced entry, no indication of burglary, and no struggle suggesting an intruder. The victim and the alleged perpetrator were living under the same roof. This is what the physical evidence and the initial police investigation revealed, and what it didn't. One of the first notable findings by Montgomery police was the weapon itself, a kitchen knife. It had not been hidden, discarded far from the scene, or washed. Instead, it was left in plain sight, directly on the porch steps of the residence. This alone led to early speculation. Some observers interpreted this as an indication of an impulsive act, not a calculated one. Others saw it as an attempt by the perpetrator to dissociate from the act, leaving the weapon out in the open to imply abandonment or possible remorse. But what followed narrowed the field of suspicion considerably. Surveillance footage, confirmed by family statements and early media reports, allegedly shows the suspect, believed to be one of Tiana's roommates, placing the knife outside after the incident. This detail established a strong link between the murder weapon and an individual known to live at the residence. No one else is seen on the footage entering or exiting the home at the time of the crime. There was no forced entry. Doors and windows were intact. No signs of a struggle outside the immediate scene. No property stolen. No outside presence captured on available surveillance. Investigators did not classify the death as a result of a break-in or robbery gone wrong. Instead, the environment pointed to something far more intimate and potentially premeditated. As for witnesses, it remains unconfirmed how many individuals were present at the time of the incident. It has not been disclosed whether any of the other roommates, if any, witnessed a stabbing or heard the argument that allegedly preceded it. No direct eyewitness statements have been publicly released. Some neighbors have reported seeing first responders arrive at the scene, but no one has come forward publicly with first-hand accounts of what transpired inside the house. However, residential security systems and nearby surveillance may still play a critical role in reconstructing the timeline. Does a lack of forced entry confirm guilt in domestic cases, or could there be more to it? The Montgomery Police Department responded to the emergency call around 10:45 a.m. paramedics, and officers arrived shortly thereafter. Tiana Dye was found inside the home, seriously wounded. She was transported to a nearby hospital where she was declared deceased. From the outset, police did not declare the scene as a homicide in the traditional sense. Instead, they referred to it as a death investigation. This specific designation typically implies that while foul play is suspected, the cause, circumstances, and responsible party have not yet been fully confirmed. The department released a statement assuring the public that there was no ongoing threat to public safety, a detail that implies the suspect was already known to authorities and that the crime was not random. Instead of immediately arresting the suspect, police stated the evidence would be handed over to a grand jury. That choice, while legally permissible, sparked concern within the local community and the victim's family. The suspect was not arrested or publicly named in the days following the incident. For many, the absence of an immediate arrest raised the question, Why wasn't a roommate, reportedly seen on surveillance placing a knife outside, taken into custody? If a person is seen with a weapon, and there are no other suspects, why delay the legal process? Law enforcement has not clarified whether the delay was due to evidentiary caution, prosecutorial strategy, or other legal constraints. The grand jury process in Alabama is often confidential, which means that developments in the case may occur without public notice until a decision is made on formal charges. This lack of transparency has triggered wider criticism. On social media and at community forums, questions continue to circulate. Was this handled differently because it occurred in a shared college residence? Would the same delay apply if this happened in a traditional household? Does the presence of surveillance and the lack of forced entry not satisfy probable cause? The Dye family has also raised concerns. According to public statements from Tiana's mother, the roommate in question had previously displayed threatening behavior, including allegedly brandishing a weapon during a past argument. If true, this may suggest a pattern of escalating aggression that could play a role in both motive and prosecution strategy. Still, none of these claims have been verified or denied by police. The investigation has remained quiet since the initial news cycle, with the suspect's identity still officially unreleased. Should police publicly name suspects in closed house killings before charges are filed? As of the latest public updates, the case remains under review by the grand jury. No formal indictment has been announced, and no arrest warrant has been issued. The Montgomery Police Department has not provided a timeline for further information. The outcome of the grand jury decision will determine the next steps, whether that includes manslaughter charges, second-degree murder, or dismissal of prosecution due to insufficient evidence. Until then, the facts available to the public remain limited. This case leaves viewers with more than a tragic story. It raises practical questions about domestic violence, the risks of shared housing, and how justice systems process intimate homicides without outside witnesses or clear motive documentation. Was this murder avoidable? Were there signs missed? And how will the justice system respond when all evidence points inside the home? In the aftermath of the July 14, 2024 stabbing death of Alabama State University student Tiana Dye, her family has taken a public stance to demand answers, accountability, and transparency. Their pursuit of justice has become a central focus of the case as law enforcement delays, limited information, and the absence of named suspect continue to frustrate those closest to the victim. Tiana Dye, 21, was a senior at ASU, majoring in biochemistry. Her academic record was strong, and her future career goal was to become a dermatologist. On the morning of her death, she had reportedly confronted her roommate over a cleanliness issue in their shared off-campus housing. That confrontation escalated into fatal violence. Tiana was stabbed in the chest and later pronounced dead at the hospital. The suspected perpetrator, widely believed to be her roommate, was not arrested at the scene. No formal charges have been confirmed as of the latest available information. Danielle Luckett, the mother of Tiana Dye, has emerged as the primary voice for the family. Speaking in multiple interviews and public posts, she has stated that her daughter's concerns were dismissed, both in a home and potentially by institutional or legal systems. According to Luckett, Tiana had previously expressed fear and discomfort about her roommate. She indicated that her daughter had complained about being left to clean up the home and that the roommate had a history of violent or aggressive behavior. Luckett has also alleged that the roommate in question had threatened other residents in the past. In one instance, the suspect was said to have pulled a weapon on another individual in the house. These past incidents, she argues, were signs of escalating danger that went unaddressed. Despite Tiana's warnings and her efforts to maintain peace, the situation ultimately turned fatal. The lack of immediate legal action following the stabbing has intensified the family's frustration. With no arrest made on the day of the incident and no suspect named publicly by law enforcement, Luckett and others close to the victim have questioned how seriously the case is being handled. Following Tiana's death, her family launched a GoFundMe campaign to raise money for funeral expenses. The campaign detailed her life, academic achievements, and the sudden, violent nature of her death. Supporters from the ASU community and beyond contributed, many leaving comments calling for justice and accountability. In addition to the fundraising effort, a candlelight vigil was organized in Tiana's memory. It was held near the Target store, where she worked part-time. Community members, co-workers, students, and faculty gathered to remember her, share stories, and express their desire for justice. The vigil also served as a platform for raising awareness about the case, which had received limited attention in its early stages. These public events and fundraisers became the foundation of a growing movement, one driven by the family and those who knew Tiana, aimed at keeping the case in the public eye. As traditional news coverage slowly picked up the case, social media became the primary tool for spreading awareness. Friends and family took to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, X, to share photos, videos, and memories of Tiana. Hashtags like hashtag Justice for Tiana and hashtag Say Her Name began to trend locally. Users reposted surveillance images, screen captures of the GoFundMe page, and statement from the family. In the absence of police statement identifying a suspect or releasing details of the investigation, the online community began piecing together information independently. Some viewers questioned the silence from officials. Others speculated about the motive, often citing jealousy or roommate conflict dynamics as a potential cause. The growing digital conversation played a role in amplifying public pressure on authorities to address the case. Local residents began demanding more transparency, and national interest began to build. As online pressure increased, the story gained the attention of larger media platforms. People magazine ran a feature outlining what was known about the case, citing Tiana's academic background and quoting her mother's public appeals for justice. The article summarized the incident and raised questions about the lack of a suspect or formal charges. Local Alabama news outlets, including WSFA and WACA, provided additional context. These reports focus on the police investigation, the family's public frustration, and the growing support for Tiana online. Several outlets confirmed that the case had been sent to a grand jury, though no further developments were confirmed at the time of reporting. The case also became a subject of interest for true crime YouTube channels, many of which analyzed the available evidence and surveillance footage. Some creators conducted timeline breakdowns, explored Tiana's background, and reviewed interviews from family and community members. These channels, while unofficial, played a role in expanding awareness of the case beyond Alabama. As information about the case spread, the public reaction was divided. One segment of the audience focused on the alleged motive. Many speculated that the stabbing was a result of jealousy, resentment, or a personal dispute that escalated. They viewed the incident as a preventable tragedy, one that could have been avoided if earlier warning signs had been taken seriously. Others turned their attention to law enforcement. Some questioned the timeline of the investigation, including why no arrest was made and why the suspect's name had not been released. In online comment sections, users debated whether the handling of the case would have been different if the roles were reversed or if the incident had occurred in a different setting. The speculation created further division, but also kept the case in public discourse. As the case remains unresolved, key questions continue to emerge. Do online movements like hashtag Justice for Tiana help or hinder real investigations? Should families be forced to campaign publicly in order for a case to receive adequate attention? Does social media accountability put pressure on police or complicate due process? In roommate violence cases, what protections or early warning systems should be in place? These questions highlight broader themes that extend beyond this single incident. The Tiana Dye case is not just about one person's death. It has become part of a larger conversation about housing safety, conflict escalation, police response, and digital justice. The family of Tiana Dye has continued to push for legal accountability in a case they believe was avoidable. From public statements and fundraisers to vigils and hashtags, their pursuit of justice is ongoing. Media coverage has grown, but many questions remain unanswered. As of the most recent reports, no suspect has been arrested, no charges have been filed publicly, and the investigation remains under review. Do you think social media attention helps or harms the pursuit of justice in developing cases like this one? Share your thoughts below. On July 14th, 2024, 21-year-old college student Tiana Dye was fatally stabbed inside her off-campus residence near Alabama State University. According to police, the stabbing followed a domestic conflict between Tiana and her roommate. The argument allegedly began when Tiana asked a roommate to clean up a shared area in the home. The situation escalated quickly. A kitchen knife was used in the attack. The weapon was later found placed outside on the porch steps. Police responded to a 911 call placed around 10:45 a.m. and found Tiana with chest wound. She was transported to a local hospital, where she was pronounced dead. Witness accounts and surveillance evidence suggest that the roommate may have been responsible. However, as of the latest available information, no formal arrest has been publicly confirmed. This has led to increased scrutiny of how the case has been handled and why justice appears to be delayed in a homicide where the scene, the parties involved, and the suspected motive were all contained within one residence. Nearly a year later, there is still no public record of an arrest. Authorities have stated that evidence collected from the scene was forwarded to a grand jury for review. A grand jury process is often used in homicide investigations to determine whether there is sufficient evidence to formally indict a suspect. But in this case, the process has remained confidential. The Montgomery Police Department confirmed that the case was classified as a death investigation, rather than labeling it immediately as a homicide. That distinction has contributed to public confusion about the timeline and the suspect's legal standing. To date, no formal charges have been announced. No arrest records have been made public. The name of the roommate, believed by the victim's family to be responsible, has been withheld. Local community members and the victim's family have called for transparency from both law enforcement and Alabama State University. As time passes without resolution, frustration grows. Should grand jury processes be more transparent when a death is involved? Should families be allowed to receive case updates even during sealed proceedings? Despite the known facts of the case, scene location, timeline, weapon used, and the fact that the suspected attacker lived in the home, multiple critical questions remain unanswered. These gaps have led to speculation and concerns about the adequacy and pace of the investigation. In many domestic homicide cases, law enforcement acts quickly to detain the last person known to be with the victim, particularly in closed, indoor environments. In this instance, however, the suspect was not taken into custody on the day of the incident. Police instead stated that the case would be forwarded to a grand jury and described it as a death investigation. This language choice and the lack of immediate action raised eyebrows within the community. Eyewitness statements and surveillance footage allegedly show the suspect placing the knife on the porch. Family members of Tiana Dye also stated that there were prior threats made by the same roommate and that Tiana had voiced concerns for her safety. Yet, no arrest followed. Possible explanations could include lack of clear probable cause at the moment of police arrival, legal concerns about procedural errors in charging too early, awaiting complete forensic analysis. Still, the decision not to arrest remains one of the most scrutinized aspects of the case. Official sources have not disclosed whether other individuals were present in the home at the time of the incident. Off-campus college housing often involves multiple tenants. The presence of other residents or guests could be critical to establishing a timeline, confirming verbal exchanges, or identifying warning signs in the hours leading up to the attack. If additional witnesses exist, their identities and statements have not been made public. It remains unclear whether the prosecution has gathered these testimonies or whether silence has been requested to protect the integrity of the grand jury process. This question adds further uncertainty. If others saw or heard the events unfold, why haven't their accounts led to a confirmed arrest? Tiana's mother has claimed that her daughter expressed safety concerns before her death. According to her, there were prior incidents of the roommate being verbally aggressive and even allegedly brandishing a weapon in the home. If these claims are accurate, it's important to ask, were these concerns ever brought to university housing officials or campus security? Did Tiana file any written complaints or seek housing reassignment? Did the university receive any third-party alerts or reports about ongoing conflicts? As Alabama State University students, both the victim and the alleged suspect were within the institution's jurisdiction, especially in terms of safety resources, conflict mediation, and mental health services. The absence of any university statement on prior warnings or institutional responsibility has contributed to public dissatisfaction. This question directly relates to accountability. If there were previous warnings, either verbal or documented, about the suspect's behavior, were they taken seriously? No public record exists to confirm whether formal complaints, police reports, or housing incident reports were filed. The Dye family alleges there were clear warning signs that went ignored. If such documentation exists and was overlooked, it could demonstrate negligence by either the university, law enforcement, or the property management company responsible for the off-campus residents. Failure to investigate or act on prior threats could have played a role in this outcome. But without records being released, this remains speculative. In most homicide cases where a suspect is identified, especially if the victim and suspect live together, authorities publicly name the individual. In this case, despite strong public suspicion directed toward the roommate, her identity remains unconfirmed. Possible reasons for withholding the name may include legal constraints tied to ongoing grand jury proceedings, lack of formal charges filed, which would trigger public access to records, protection of the suspect's identity until evidence is officially reviewed. However, this has also created confusion and distrust. In the age of social media, speculation fills the void left by official silence. Names are shared online without verification, which can be damaging for individuals wrongly accused or for investigations not yet complete. The death of Tiana Dye presents a complex legal and investigative scenario. What began as a domestic dispute inside a shared college residence has turned into a prolonged, largely silent case marked by delay, confidentiality, and community pressure. The facts suggest a clear timeline and a small pool of individuals involved. Yet over a year later, the public remains without clarity, accountability, or justice. The longer questions remain unanswered, the louder the demands for transparency will grow. What should happen when a death occurs in a shared home and the suspected killer is not immediately charged? Does the system protect suspects more than victims in these cases? In July 2024, the stabbing death of Tiana Dye, a senior biochemistry major at Alabama State University, brought new attention to a growing issue often overlooked in housing environments: the rising threat of interpersonal violence among roommates. Tiana lived off campus and shared housing reportedly provided or affiliated with university access. According to family statements and law enforcement reports, her confrontation with a female roommate over basic cleanliness spiraled into fatal violence. A single stab wound to the chest ended her life, and the suspect, though known, has yet to be publicly charged or named. While this case remains under review by a grand jury, it highlights broader systemic issues that extend beyond a single conflict. Studies over the last decade point to a steady rise in reported assaults and even homicides involving roommates. In a 2019 FBI Uniform Crime Reporting (UCR) summary, a growing number of domestic homicides involved non-romantic, cohabiting individuals, including roommates. Shared living arrangements, once seen as cost-effective and socially convenient, are becoming flashpoints for conflict. Part of this trend reflects economic conditions. Rising housing costs and limited university dorm space force many young adults into close living quarters with limited compatibility screening. In these environments, disputes often arise over cleanliness, finances, and lifestyle differences, factors that can build silent tension over time. Cleanliness disputes are among the top causes of roommate tension. In the case of Tiana Dye, reports indicate that she was responsible for maintaining most of the household cleanliness. Family members say she routinely took out trash, cleaned dishes, and managed basic household upkeep. On the day of the incident, she had once again cleaned and taken out trash. When she confronted her roommate with a simple request to clean up her own mess, it escalated into violence. Such disputes are common in shared housing. Surveys show that 60% of roommate disagreements are rooted in household chores. However, when these expectations aren't clearly communicated or enforced, disputes fester. Some universities provide roommate agreements at the start of cohabitation, but these often focus on logistics, not interpersonal dynamics. When agreements break down or are never taken seriously, residents may take matters into their own hands, increasing potential for confrontation. Money is another critical point of tension. Though not a central issue in the Dye case as publicly known, studies have shown that financial disputes over rent, groceries, and utility bills are the second most common cause of escalation among cohabitants. When roommates fail to pay their share, live beyond agreed means, or misuse shared resources, resentment builds. In university housing, this is compounded by students' limited income, lack of legal experience, and insufficient mediation mechanisms. Without conflict resolution training or intervention, minor financial disagreements can lead to intense personal animosity and, in rare but serious cases, physical aggression. Respect for boundaries, physical, emotional, and personal, is another critical element in co-living dynamics. Roommates often have vastly different expectations regarding privacy, noise levels, guests, and schedules. These unspoken assumptions become frequent sources of strain. In Tiana's case, her family alleges that the roommate had previously displayed threatening behavior, including brandishing a weapon in a prior disagreement. If true, this would indicate a history of boundary violations that were either ignored or not escalated to university or legal authorities. While this is still under investigation, the signs of a breakdown in safe cohabitation were already present. When early warnings are not addressed, the risk of aggression increases. Many victims of roommate violence report being threatened weeks or months before any serious incident occurs. Yet, without formal complaint processes or real-time intervention, no preventative measures are taken. College and university housing systems typically focus on surface-level compatibility, class year, smoking preferences, major. They do not screen for behavioral tendencies, mental health status, conflict history, or psychological readiness for cohabitation. In private housing, tenant placement is often even less controlled, leaving roommate matching entirely to chance or online roommate finder apps. This lack of psychological compatibility checking has significant implications. Sharing a space with someone who exhibits aggressive tendencies, manipulative behavior, or signs of instability creates an unsafe environment. Without formal tools to identify these risks, institutions place students in vulnerable positions. Moreover, student renters are often unsure where to report psychological or emotional discomfort. Without clear pathways or assurance of support, they may stay silent until a confrontation occurs. In many college environments, landlords and schools operate independently of each other. Even when violent behavior surfaces, universities may defer to local police. In turn, police may classify incidents as civil if no immediate legal violation is reported. This gap leaves serious behavioral red flags undocumented. Students are rarely removed from housing unless arrested or involved in a serious legal issue. Meanwhile, the cycle of tension continues in closed environments. In the Tiana Dye case, no formal record of previous roommate aggression has been confirmed publicly, but her family statement suggests that warnings were present. If no administrative action was taken, it reflects a broader failure in institutional oversight. The case raises a critical question for viewers and administrators. Institutions can require students to complete conflict resolution training before cohabitation. This includes red flag education, escalation reporting, and behavior agreements. Create anonymous reporting systems for students to flag aggression or threats without fear of retaliation. While detailed psychological testing may not be feasible, short screening forms about behavioral preferences, emotional triggers, and conflict styles could improve roommate matching. For off-campus affiliated housing, schools should partner with landlords to schedule regular in-person or virtual wellness checks. All parties should agree to basic behavior standards. If unresolved conflict exists, they should be offered mediation or relocation options. If multiple residents report an individual for hostile behavior, a mandatory review should be triggered by school administration. The death of Tiana Dye is a tragic example of how ignored tension in shared housing can escalate beyond control. While her case is still under grand jury review, the circumstances raise broader concerns about how conflict in roommate situations is managed or overlooked entirely. What responsibilities should landlords, universities, and tenants carry in preventing roommate violence? Should screening go beyond surface-level traits to include behavioral and psychological history?